in my opinion, the best way to get Donald J. Trump back in the White House if he's running against Joe Biden, because there is obvious mental deficiencies in that campaign. All right, we'll put that on the back burner for a moment. We'll welcome in. Well, I don't know if we put it on the back burner or not, because maybe our next guest has a comment or two on it. He is Senator Jack Johnson. He's the Senate Majority Leader. He joins us in the midst of summer, looking very casual, looking very svelte, looking good. Hey, Jack, how are you?
I'm good, Matt. Good to be with you again.
Thank you for being with us.
You're looking well as well. I like the long hair.
Well,
I think
you.
it's a good thing.
That's nice of you. I appreciate that.
Locks for Trump.
Locks for Trump.
If I had any hair, I would let it grow. But
you should let the back. You should let the back.
Kind of a mullet kind of thing. Nothing on top.
I'll buy you one of those jackets with the patches on the sleeves and get you a peep.
Yes. Yeah. That'd be a good look.
Professorial for you.
Yes.
How's things going this summer?
It's good. It's good. Just returned from a 10-day trip with my family to Germany. And we'd been promising our kids that we would take them to Europe. We were going to do it in 2020. And then, a little thing happened,
Yeah.
And
Probably not the best time to go.
Yeah, and then international travel was all a mess for a couple of years. But anyway, we finally got around to it. So, yeah, I haven't had a trip like that in a long time.
Do you make it a point to try? I do this even on my vacations because I can't help myself. But I look at it more as an entertainment exercise, that I try to engage on the surface level on politics just to see. Mm-hmm. Did you do any of that overseas? Or did you hear anything?
So I did. And, I've got folks that I'm routinely in contact with, and I spoke with they all knew I was going to be gone. I said, look, use your best judgment if it's something that you feel like I need to know if it's going to happen. But here's what I found is because you're 7 hours ahead. So for, half the time that most people back here were awake and doing stuff, whatever, I was sound asleep. And from the time I got up in the morning and until 2:00 or so in the afternoon, everybody here was asleep.
We talked on the phone when you were in Germany one time.
That's how important you are to me. I will be that responsive to you. That's right.
I'm more curious. I want to, come to speak.
That's right. I did an interview with you from Germany.
You did.
That's right.
Now, I'm more interested. Do you hear any political discussion over there? Like, do they pay any attention to what's going on in the United States, or did you get that close to it?
Well, and of course I couldn't understand most
they're
of
probably
them
talking about you,
in terms
right?
of the locals. But a lot of folks in Germany, and a lot of folks in Europe generally speak pretty good English. So not all, but you would have some encounters with some, and they'd be like, they would hear me talk or my wife talk or kids talk, and they'd say, well, where in the States are you from? And we'd have a little bit of a conversation. But what's interesting is we toured Dachau, which was extremely somber.
Oh,
I mean,
bet.
it's important to do, and I'm glad I did it and pay tribute to the horrific things that happened there. But we're in a tour group of about 12 or 15 people, and some were from other parts in Europe or other countries, but there was another family there of 5 people. And we got to talking to where y'all from? Knoxville, Tennessee. It's always a Tennessee connection, it seems like.
And your next question is, you're not a Gloria Johnson voter, are you?
No, I don't think they were. I think we talked a little politics, but
you mentioned Dachau, and it's on my bucket list. That we do need to remember these types of things.
Absolutely.
And you especially consider what's going on nowadays. And how many people, sadly, in the United States of America don't seem to have a full grasp of the history of what the Jewish people have gone through. It's important that we remember our history lest we repeat it.
Absolutely. And we had the most amazing tour guide. He was from Ireland, interestingly. And so, he does English-speaking tours. There are obviously tour groups with Germans and all. And he just knew the history, and he knew so much stuff, and was amazing. And he said quite proudly that it is now compulsory in Germany that every kid who attends German schools tours tours a concentration camp.
Wow.
And learns about it, and learns about what, happened in their country. And I think that's good because, as you said, it's evil history, and it puts a real focus on what mankind is capable of, the evil that mankind can be capable of. And
what we're willing to be blind to.
Absolutely. And how people right there in Germany, and there's the town of Dachau. Dachau is a town, and there's homes all around that. And you realize the proximity, and people just going about their lives, and then this horrific suffering that's taking place just yards away.
Well, and, the citizenry is one aspect of it. And it's my understanding that in the aftermath of the discovery of the concentration camps that the American and Russian troops forced the German citizens in the individual towns to tour the facilities
and
to help and to assist with the burial of the bodies.
Absolutely.
In a way to demand that they look at that which they had ignored for so long.
And another thing I thought interesting and somewhat poetic is that they used the facility to imprison German officers that were running the facility. So they ended up being prisoners
in the very facility
that they were guarding. So yeah, it's I encourage people to do it if they ever get an opportunity, because we study it and we know that what transpired over there and how awful it was, but actually see it and see the barracks and where it took place and then see pictures, it's somber.
How long of a tour is it? Like, how long does it take you to get through it?
So the guide we were with, it was a good 3 or 4 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was. And again, and I could have stayed longer and probably still didn't read all of the placards and all of the stuff. I bought a book that goes into greater detail about it. But it was a good 3 or 4 hours.
So on a lighter side of the Germany trip, are you a beer drinker, Jack?
I am.
Did you have any beer over there, Jack?
You got to go to a Biergarten.
The Biergarten?
The Biergarten.
Yeah.
That's right. Yes. So Biergartens, Garten, I think, and beer is beer, BEIR, I think. And yes, I did enjoy a couple of beers while I was over there, and enjoyed that. Weather was great. We stayed in a little town called Mittenwald for the most of our time, which is just right on the Austrian border and what is Bavaria, and lovely country and great weather. It was a wonderful trip.
Biergarten is like kindergarten, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Kindergarten is like a place where kids go.
Yeah, that's true. Biergarten is where people like you and me go.
Yeah, they want to drink some beer.
and you learn a lot at a Biergarten, too.
Well, at least you think you do. One way or the other. You learn how many beers you can drink. At least that's what I would learn. But you are here to talk about some of these wonderful laws that you folks in the General Assembly saw fit to pass, and many of them went into effect on July 1st. The one that Belkay demands that I address first is the anti-booting law.
Yeah.
Now, help me understand why this was a thing and why the General Assembly needed to address it as a thing.
Sure. So, immobilization of a vehicle, right? So we're all familiar with vehicles being towed, and, you park somewhere illegally, you're subject to being towed, and that's fine. If you park somewhere you're not supposed to be, or if you're parking a paid lot and you don't pay, then you might be subject to being towed. The barrier to entry to be a towing company, you got to buy a tow truck, you get licensed and all this kind of stuff. Well, unfortunately, these boots that they put on your wheel that immobilizes your vehicle, you can buy those on Amazon. And we unfortunately had some predatory booting taking place in the state of Tennessee, where people would just park somewhere. There's no signs, no place to pay, no anything. You go have a nice dinner with your wife or your husband, and you come out and there's a boot on your vehicle, and a guy walks up and says, that'll be $150. And you don't really have much of a choice, but to pay it, it's extortion more or less. So we passed what I thought was a pretty reasonable bill that bans booting in Tennessee unless the local government passes an ordinance to allow it, and then they set policies and put a licensing process in place. Just so if you are going to get booted, you got to know that you're parking someplace where you shouldn't be parking, and or where it's paid or it's private property or something like that.
So it has to be, you're just kind of declaring and certifying or codifying the obvious to most, that you have to have some form of signage and whatnot.
Yeah. You just have to be aware that you're parking someplace where you need to pay, or it has to be posted that it's private property and you can't park there. And again, the issue becomes, you can buy a booting device on Amazon for $50 and go out and put yourself in the booting business, and we don't want people doing that. If you're going to do it, you need to actually be licensed.
I've always wondered, if you live in a major city, I watch these you watch Parking Wars. You ever seen Parking Wars? Parking Wars is great. And they go like into Philadelphia and Detroit, and they follow people around that boot cars or whatever. And I've often wondered, if I lived in a major city like that, if they have boots and they have the equipment to take the boots off, couldn't I buy the equipment to take the boots off?
Probably so. It might have a specific lock that requires a specific key or something. But knowing you've got the tools in the back of your truck that you could just get that thing off.
I mean, I'm just suggesting that maybe that could become a cottage industry as well.
Removing boots.
Yeah, for $50 a piece, I'll just go in and remove a boot. Yeah. What else? Does anything come to mind when I say laws going into effect July 1st? Anything in particular come to mind?
Yeah, so, I kind of compartmentalize, the various subject matters that we deal with. Obviously, the budget, incredibly important. Tennessee continues to do very well from a fiscal standpoint. We passed the largest tax cut in the history of the state. I think 12 years running now that we've cut taxes every single year, and the largest tax cut ever we passed this last session. So that's important for Tennesseans. On the crime side of things, a lot of important legislation relative to crime. As you know, we've got a serious crime problem down in Memphis and in other places as well. Tennessee does not rank very well whenever it comes to crime statistics. That's important. Very proud of the Elvis Act to protect our singers and songwriters who create wonderful music from AI, from not having their voice replicated,
right.
And, some production. So that's important. Generally speaking, we continue to make Tennessee hopefully a great place to live, work, raise a family, and apparently we're succeeding because people are moving here in droves.
You do not have an election this year.
I do not,
but many of your colleagues do.
They do.
Is that do you anticipate that will ramp up in earnest after the July 4th holiday?
Yeah, and in fact, it's really already
kind of cranking up right now.
Kind of cranking up for those areas. So all 99 House members are up because they have 2-year terms, so they run every 2 years. On the Senate side, we have 4-year terms, so half of the Senate is up this cycle, and then the other half would be up in 2 years. So the primary is August 1st. So you certainly want to make sure you know who's running, and if you have a senator who's up or a House member who's challenged or something, so you want to be aware of that. We'll get through the August 1st primary and then get to the November 5th general. And a lot of focus, obviously, and warranted on the presidential race and the status.
What do you make of that? What do you make of where we are?
So I was thinking I've been a political junkie since I was old enough to know what it's all about. And I've studied, some, not as much as many people have, but, from a historical context, the last time we had a candidate for president, leave the race was 1968 in Lyndon Baines Johnson when he announced, and it was earlier than
April,
this.
Right?
Yeah. The primaries and caucuses were already underway, so that process was taking place.
I will not seek, nor will I accept your nomination for president
to be your president.
That was actually different too, because he was the one saying, "I'm not doing this again." So you guys find somebody else.
And he had done a full term, and he had served the remainder of the Kennedy term, and so the decision that he made sense. That he felt like he didn't want to do the 10 years. He said, I'm done.
Right. Gave my pound of flesh.
Yeah, and he gave it a little bit late, but plenty of time for Robert F. Kennedy to get into the race, et cetera.
And I think he knew that RFK was going to challenge him, and that was going to be a
tough battle anyway.
Tough battle, and then he had some health issues that were going on, but yeah. So from a historical context, if in fact Biden does bow out, as many suspect that he will, we are living in largely unprecedented times in our lifetimes, and even in the 20th century. I don't think it's. Yeah,
I'm trying to off the top of my head recall a presidential contest in which one of the candidates was considered too infirm to continue the race, whether they did or not, but. I certainly can't remember anything in modern history.
Yeah, and even as was the case with LBJ, I mean, no one questioned his mental acuity or his mental health. He was having some physical health issues, I think, because he died not long. I don't remember what year, but it wasn't terribly long after that. He died at a relatively young age from a heart attack. But so it's just a fascinating time if Biden bows out and to go into that convention with effectively an open convention.
Before this debate happened on the 27th. I would have suggested that, it was like 80-20 he stays versus he goes, maybe even 90-10. Now the teeter-totter has tipped decidedly. Has it for you? I mean, do you think there's more of a likelihood that he doesn't make it in November than he does, or would you dare say?
Yeah, no, that's kind of how I think about it. Is it 50-50, 60-40? And from what I'm seeing in the news reports and hearing you guys talking about it, as I'm listening throughout the day, I'd say it's 60-40. 60% he gets out. When you have actual, members of your party who are in Congress coming out and calling for you to step aside, some publicly and some privately that we know of, that tends to build momentum. It tends to be somewhat of an avalanche.
And the only way you repair this is by presenting the president before the American people and show that it is wrong, that he is not mentally incapable to do the job. The only reason in my mind that you're not doing that is because he can't.
That's right.
And that's a frightening prospect.
It's a very frightening prospect. And as we know, in front of a teleprompter, he's done a couple of speeches, things in front of a teleprompter where he sounded better, but he was reading straight from the teleprompter.
Right.
In terms of an impromptu, off-the-cuff type of press conference or gaggle or something like that, we haven't seen it. And that's the only thing, him doing that and doing that repeatedly, that I think would repair the damage done in the debate.
Final question, because Bell says we got to go here, and I know that we're limited on time. But final question, considering this boot law, this strictly structuring who can and cannot, Bell K wants to know if he can get all the money back that he's been booted over the years.
Interestingly, there was a booting company here in Nashville that was required to refund about 200 people.
There you go, Bell. Maybe
if you were on that list, Bell, then you're probably entitled to a refund. So
how was the list created?
Metro Council. I've got an article here that I'll show you, because if you've been booted in the last, few months, that you might be entitled to a refund.
I'm fairly confident this is the reason that Bell really was laser focused on the boot law.
Hey, sometimes, you
got to do what you got to do.
There's privileges to your job.
Got to use your influence. I get it.
And two, I'm going to the convention. I'm a delegate for President Trump, so I'll be up in Milwaukee.
I'm
looking forward to that.
I know we got to go, but is the AI law that passed, is that specific to music, or would that cover like voice actors too?
It would cover voice actors, anything. Basically, we protected voice just like we already protect your image, your likeness, and things like that. So we added voice to that.
That's our version of name, image, likeness. In the state of kind of the state of Tennessee. Jack, always good to see you, man.
Yeah, thanks,
Glad
man.
you had a good trip over in Germany.
Yes.
Good to have you back. And we'll get Jack on from time to time over the course. And maybe you can be one of our correspondents from
I would love
the RNC.
to.
We'll talk.
I'd love to.